Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is the first of 3 videos featuring some patches I've put together using the analog synth modules from Dannysound. These are DIY kits available from Thonk here in the UK, and the range includes 2 flavours of analog oscillator, a wavefolder, a filter, a VCA and an envelope generator. Together they provide a really solid and versatile analog core for a modular system with the perfect combo of East Coast and West Coast synthesis. They borrow elements from vintage Buchla and Moog designs, along with a few unique twists of their own, so you can make classic sounding fat basses and leads, as well as wave-shaped and wave-folded tones, various flavours of analog FM, percussion sounds, wild effects and loads more. They also look pretty cool with these lovely Rogan knobs, as you can see. So in this first video, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of each module before diving into some patches that explore West Coast Buchla-style wave shaping and wavefolding kind of sounds. There's a timing index below if you want to skip around, and in the meantime, here's a quick preview of what's coming up. So there are 6 core synth modules in the Dannysound range, as well as a dynamics processor that's just come out that I haven't bought yet. I'm not going to do a full feature-by-feature demo of every module individually. Instead, when I build the patches, I'll cover the key features then. But if you are interested in more in-depth reviews, I can heartily recommend the videos by DivKid and Synth DIY Guy, which are excellent. I'll put links to those in the description. For now, they'll just give you a very quick overview of the key features of each module. First up is the Cali Osc. This is based on the Buchla-258 oscillator. It's kind of similar to half of the new Tip-Top 258T module. Offers sine to saw and sine to square wave shaping with CV. There's also a bonus middle waveform, which to me is pretty unusable, but it is there. There's also a separate pulse output with PWM, and it's got linear and logarithmic FM inputs as well. Next is the Timbre, which is based on the Buchla 259 wavefolder as used in the music easel. It's got 2 inputs with a mix control. You've got the folder mount here with an attenuator for the CV. There's a symmetry input which lets you shift the point at which the folding starts on the waveform, and you can blend between the wet and dry as well. Then we've got the EN129 oscillator, which takes its name from issue number 129 of Electro Notes magazine from back in the 80s, an article about through zero FM, which is this module's main selling point. It's a form of linear FM that allows for really musical kind of tones. I'll talk a bit more about that in the next video. As well as the through zero FM, we have logarithmic FM inputs. It's got 5 simultaneous waveform outputs, sine, triangle, sawtooth, pulse and square. There's pulse modulation, there's also a sawtooth modulation, which I'll talk about in another video, and there's a soft sync input. Then there's the Multimode Ladder Filter, which is based on the original Moog 4-pole low-pass transistor ladder design, but with band-pass and high-pass modes as well. There's saturation and soft clipping on the input, CV control over resonance, and 2 CV controls over the cutoff. Then we've got the MM VCA, which is also based on a Moog design. In this case, it's the Mini Moog. There are 2 inputs that you can mix together, also with soft clipping and saturation. Really beautiful sound. And there's 2 stages of VCA as well, so you could use one for velocity, or you could use an LFO and an envelope simultaneously. I don't normally get that excited about VCAs, but this has got a really, really warm sound. It really fattens things up when you start cranking the level slightly. And finally, there's the Looping VC-ADSR, which is a fairly straightforward attack, decay, sustain, release envelope generator. It's got CV inputs for all those stages, plus it's got an output level with CV control as well, which is great for velocity kind of effects, or just to attenuate the output before you feed it to another module. It can operate in looping mode, in gated looping mode, or in kind of classic envelope mode where it fires the envelope while it's receiving a gate. Just a quick note on the building process, because these are DIY kits. I've built these one at a time over the past few months, and they're fairly straightforward. I probably wouldn't recommend them if you're a complete novice to building. Maybe try out some cheaper kits first to practice your soldering skills. But if you've successfully built many modules before, you should have no trouble. There's no surface mount stuff. It's all through hole. The build guides are really good. Calibration processes are pretty straightforward. And all of mine worked first time, and I'm definitely not an expert. They're not the cheapest kits in the world, but if you are confident about sourcing your own components, you can save quite a bit of money by buying the panel and PCB sets, which is what I did. They started about £50 each that way. Should probably also mention at this point, I'm not sponsored by Thonk or Dannysound. I'm not affiliated in any way. I'm just a big fan. So with that out of the way, let's start making some noises. Okay, for this first patch, I'm going to look at using the timbre to do some wavefolding on the sine wave output of the Cali Osc. These two are the kind of Buchla-style West Coast modules in the range. Out of shot, I've got a Arturia key step 37, and I've got the pitch and gate of that going into these two buffered mults on the IntelliGel case. That means I can take the pitch and gate information into any other bits of the patch. So to start off with, I'm just going to take the pitch into the volt per octave. I'm going to take the output of that module into the input of the timbre. And I'm just going to take the raw output of the timbre with no folding, just the sine wave, so you can hear. And as I play different keys on the keyboard, just adjusting the pitch. So this is what happens when we start folding. So as you can hear, some really great tones available from that folder. Just from folding that sine wave over on itself, you're turning that really basic tone into something much more rich and harmonic. But it gets really interesting when you start using the CV input to use an envelope to control that folding. So as the note evolves, that timbre, that folding amount kind of increases and decreases. So I'm going to use the same envelope to control the amplitude through the VCA as well as the folder, just to keep it quite simple. So if I take the output of the VCA instead, I'll take the gate from the keyboard to trigger the envelope over here, and I use this mult to split a copy of the output. I'll take one into the VCA, and I'll take one into the timbre, and I'll take the output of the timbre into the input of the VCA. Just keep that at 12 o'clock for now, so I'm not adding any extra harmonics. Without any folding, without any CV applied, because that attenuator is at 12 o'clock, we should just have a kind of sine wave. But now as we increase the amount of modulation going to the folder from the same envelope, really brings that sound to life with a bit more of that kind of almost FM-y kind of strange. So let's just play a sequence into that and have a little play. Another thing that's quite nice to do to bring these patches to life a little bit is to take another copy of that gate from the sequencer, plug that into the trigger input of the R&D step from DivKid, and tick a couple of those unipolar random outputs. This means every time it triggers a note, it's going to trigger a kind of unipolar random voltage on about half the time. Let's plug that into the decay, and we'll take another one into the overall level of the envelope, which I brought down slightly. Now what this means is it'll occasionally boost that decay time and boost that level, giving us kind of these accents. It'll be pretty subtle, but I think once we start the sequence again, if we add some drums, so just using that wavefolder on a sine wave, we're getting some pretty cool tones. No FM around, no filters to be seen, just folding that sine wave. Okay, for this next patch I'm going to look at the wave shaping on the Cali Osc and build up a sort of dual layer patch with a bit of dynamic timbral variation with each note. To start with, I've got the key step coming into the case again, the pitch and gate. I've got the pitch going into the volt per octave of the Cali Osc. That's going straight into the MM VCA. The gate from the key step is controlling the envelope, which is going to open the VCA. That's just going, the output of the VCA is just going straight into Monsoon for a little bit of reverb, which I'll add later. At the moment, it's just a sine wave, which sounds like this. And if I adjust the wave shaper, you can hear how it morphs from a sine into a triangle, and I'll just show you the square as well. Today I'm going to use the sawtooth version, and what I want to do is create a second envelope, which I'm going to use Joranalogue's Contour 1, and I'm going to use a kind of triggered function from that whenever I play a note, and I'm going to take that, the output of that function, into the waveshape CV of the oscillator. So now when I play a note, Joranalogue 1 will do a little rise fall, which will adjust that wave shaping. So it sounds a little bit like opening a filter, because that's effectively what it's doing. It's turning the sine wave, which is very pure and doesn't have any harmonics, to the much richer sawtooth wave. Now the next thing I want to do is use the EN129 oscillator for a second layer, and I'm going to take advantage of the inverted output of the Contour 1, and I'm going to use that same function but in reverse. So rather than opening the wave shaper, what I'm going to do on the EN129 is run that through a filter and then use the inverted function from Contour 1 to close that filter. So let's just wire up the volt per octave, another copy of the same one, into the EN129. I'll take the square wave output into the filter, and I'll take the output of the filter into the other channel of the VCA, and I'm just going to turn down the Cali Osc so we're just hearing the EN129. Now I'm not doing anything with the filter at the moment other than just running it through it. So that's a slightly filtered square wave, but now if I take the inverted output of the Contour 1, take that into the CV input of the filter, now when I hold the note, you hear the filter closes and then swells and opens again. So it's kind of doing the opposite of what the Cali Osc was doing. So if I bring them both in together, bring the Cali Osc back up. So you get this really nice effect where they kind of cross-fade with each other. So as the Cali Osc swells with that kind of sawtooth, the filter on the square wave on the EN129 closes, so they kind of get out of each other's way and then open up again. If I add a little bit of reverb to that. Resonance there. Now I'm just going to tune these a fifth apart. I'm going to tune the Cali Osc up a fifth. So that's already sounding pretty nice, but I'm going to take it one step further by patching both of those oscillator outputs into another pair of VCAs, and I'm going to use the Joranalogue Filter 8 in LFO mode. It's got 8 outputs basically, which are outputting sine waves at LFO frequency, and they're all 45 degrees out of phase with each other. So if I take ones that are completely opposite, and I'm going to use them to control the VCAs with the outputs of the two oscillators, I'm going to be able to kind of crossfade between them dynamically as well. So there's a little bit of patching up to do here. I'm going to take the output of the first oscillator, it's going to go from there. The second oscillator is going to come out of there. And then the outputs of the Joranalogue, I'm going to run them through the quadrat so that I've got a bit of control over them and I can offset them as well. So let's just take the first one into output B, and I'll take the one that's out of phase with that into input D. And then I can take these outputs to be the CV of the two VCAs. And I just need to take the output of oscillator 1 and the filtered output of oscillator 2 into the other channel. Now I'm not doing anything with filter 8 yet, I'll keep those channels down, and I'm just going to use channels A and C on the quadrat basically to mix between them. So now I should be able to... That's just the square wave. That's just the Cali Osc sine, a fifth up. And now if I bring a little bit of the signal from the filter 8 in to control these VCAs, it's kind of slowly crossfading between them effectively now. Not sure if you can quite see on the picture here, but these VCA LEDs here are kind of rising and falling. If I bring the rate up a bit, you can hear them kind of fading between each other. Now it gets interesting if you start bringing this up into audio rate. If I flick it into audio mode, so now it's kind of clanging amplitude modulation sounds. And if I just take another copy of the pitch CV from the key step, and I'll take that into the volt per octave input on the filter 8, so it'll track pitch the same as the oscillators do when I'm moving the notes around. So try and dial into a nice sympathetic frequency. Now I've got a really complex patch going on with the wave shaping fading in as the filter fades out, and I've now got manual control here over the amount of amplitude modulation that's being brought in by this filter 8. So I can mix between the waveforms manually, and I can mix the amount of AM individually on each oscillator. If I whack the reverb up, let's just saturate this VCA slightly as well. I was actually playing with a variation of this patch the other night and recorded a separate little jam, so if you want to go and check that out, that's the last video that I uploaded before this one. Okay, for the last patch in this video, I'm going to look at the wave shaping again in the Cali Osc, but this time, rather than that kind of slow fade we had in the last patch, I'm going to take it up into audio rates to see what kind of tones we can get. At the moment I've got the pitch and gate from the key step coming into the mults again. I've got the pitch going into the volt per octave. I've just got the raw output of the Cali Osc at the moment going into the sound card. So this is the sine wave. And this is how it sounds as the wave shape goes into square. So I'm going to use the EN129 oscillator. At the moment it's in LFO mode just so we can hear what it's going to do. I'm going to take the sine wave output of that. So that's a sine LFO going into the wave shape CV. And if I bring the wave shape to about halfway up and I bring the CV up, that sine wave will start sweeping the wave shaping from sine to square and back again quite slowly. And as I bring this frequency up, get some quite interesting tones. Let's bring it right up into audio range proper. Now I'm going to want that modulation to track the same pitch as the main oscillator, so let's just take another copy of the volt per octave pitch from the key step into the volt per octave here, and let's just try and tune this to a kind of musical relationship, see how that sounds. So let's try and do something with that tone. The one module that's kind of missing from the Dannysound lineup in my eyes for West Coast style synthesis is a low pass gate. So you might have noticed this module here. This is the AI Synthesis LPG. I've actually disguised it as a Dannysound module by using these Rogan knobs. Normally it has the red knobs like these modules up here. But I'm going to use this low pass gate with a very, very short trigger signal from the ADSR envelope. So let's just take the gate from the keyboard into the envelope. I'll take the output of that envelope into the CV input of the LPG. I'm actually going to run the output of the LPG through a spring reverb as well. I've got the music thing modular spring up here, so let's just take that output there. I'm going to take the output of the LPG into the spring, which is bypassed at the moment, everything's off. And I'm just going to take the output of the Cali Osc into the input of the LPG. Now this envelope is going to be triggered by the key step, but I've turned everything right down, so all it's going to give us is a very, very short pulse. That's going to ping the LPG, which is Vactrol based, so it's going to get this nice ringing decay sound, which is the kind of natural decay from the Vactrols. Let's hear how that sounds. And I'm just going to pop the key step up here so that you can see what I'm doing. And let's try an arpeggio. So we get that nice plucked LPG kind of pinging decay sound. Let's add a little bit of the spring reverb. And now it gets really interesting when you start adjusting the frequency of that modulating oscillator. It's sounding quite musical at the moment, but once we start doing this, we can kind of dial in and out of atonal and musical kind of intervals. These kind of tones are quite nice higher up. just going to try the LPG in its kind of full-on filter mode, which filters it a bit more extreme than the LPG does. And we've got some resonance available there as well. So as you can hear, sweeping that modulating oscillator really does give a huge range of possible tones, everything from kind of melodic synth lines to atonal percussion. When you combine that with the kind of pinging decay on the Vactrol low pass gate, you get this really classic West Coast kind of sound, especially with a bit of spring reverb added as well. So that's it for this video. I'll be back very soon with more patches with these Dannysound oscillators, exploring through 0FM and other ways to animate the oscillators, waveform switching, PWM, all sorts of other techniques. As always, please do like and subscribe, leave your comments below, it's always great to hear from you. Really hope you've got some ideas from this that you can use in your own patches, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.